Welcome to the Nebraskabilities podcast. I am Nate alongside my co-hosts Zach and Andy. This week we will be discussing the 24-17 end cap to the season win over Iowa in Iowa City. And past that, no other notable news. So we'll just go ahead and get right into it. We may have hired a coach or something
Absolutely
along the way, but,
nothing else happened after the Iowa game. It just the season ended and we went all on our ways.
Yep.
The true Nebraska way. Awesome. You love it. You love to see it.
But yeah, we came out swinging against Iowa. It was a pretty fun game to watch until about honestly the fourth quarter or so, when it really started to get spicy and things started to get a little out of hand. But we were up by enough and made just enough plays that we ended up on top 24-17. It was again just a nice way to see the seniors out, nice way to end the season as a fan. It's been a rough one, but we were able to kind of go on top at the end of the season and against Iowa no less. So that was always a beautiful thing to see.
And never forget, Nebraska has the better corn.
Always.
At
Never
least
in question.
For a year.
At least this year.
But yeah, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Zach on any of his quick thoughts on the Iowa game.
Yeah, for me, I was out. It was a really nice day that weekend that game was on. So I was actually out golfing with my family for Thanksgiving. So I only got to listen to it on the radio. So I got to go back, what felt like 20 years and experience Nebraska football back in the glory days, which even felt better that we got a win against Iowa. But so I had to go back and watch some of the highlights. So I didn't get to experience it live like you guys did, but it was actually crazy to see, because I know we've all talked about it, but I think we finally saw what we've been wanting since Mickey took over there near the end, or there, for the last few games, which was consistency up until the fourth quarter. But, we saw probably the most consistent Nebraska team, and they came out and beat Iowa, which was I think a big surprise to everybody, because Iowa's defense was going to be essentially the linchpin. Like, if we could beat them, we had a good shot, we thought. But their defense was solid enough that we were like, I don't know if we can do it, but they pulled it off. And so, I mean, really, my overall quick thoughts are we beat Iowa, and we ended the year on a high note. We ended the year after that, apparently hiring a new coach as well. I think that may have happened. And, kind of riding out a good high wave for the most part, just to end the season, which, the season wasn't great. Everybody knows that, but I think the outlook looks positive, but we'll get into more of that as we get into this episode, but I'll pass it to Andy.
Yeah, so like we've already mentioned, I mean, just beating, every year I always look at the schedule and I'm like, if we just beat like Wisconsin and Iowa, like honestly, I say this saying like I don't care about the rest of the schedule. Like I obviously do. I want Nebraska to win all their games, but at the end of the day, I'm like, if we just have like bragging rights over Wisconsin and or Iowa every single year, I mean, that's just like it's the icing on the cake of what I want to happen with this team. And finally getting a win against Iowa, the first one since 2014, was like just monumental for just any sort of momentum that this program needed heading into, at the time, a very uncertain offseason, as we will get into more pretty soon. If you've been living under a rock the past week and a half, if you did not know, Matt Rhule is the new Nebraska head coach. But, at the time of the Iowa game, everything was still kind of uncertain. An hour before kickoff, I mean, just more rumors and more smoke about, Rhule was finalizing a deal with Trev, coming in the coming days after the game, so on and so forth. So obviously the team, playing the game at that time didn't know about that, but just as fans watching the game, you kind of have that in the back of your mind, but also like, let's support this current team. They have one more game left type thing. And, I think we all just beating Iowa, just it's such a euphoric feeling. Regardless of how bad this Nebraska team is, and as we all know, it was a bad bad season, bad team still, but you know, preventing Iowa from going to the Big Ten championship was just a great feeling, knowing that they lost to probably one of the more bad Nebraska teams. I mean, we know last year was bad too, a 3-9 Nebraska team, but I still think like last year's team was slightly to a little bit better than this year's team. Um, and what we had said all year, I mean, Casey being healthy and leading this offense just totally changes how the offense looks and runs. Now, obviously, Whipple being as stubborn as he is kind of held us back, especially, the second half, more toward the end of the third quarter and definitely the fourth quarter, when the offense kind of went into a shell. But, you look at the games that Casey plays versus what he doesn't play. I mean, the team and the offense totally looks like a different identity. But yeah, just beating Iowa, we'll get into the whole, at the time I was always, before everything that we know now came out about Mickey, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. But at the end of the game, I was just kind of like, man, for all this team has been through, I mean, Mickey and the staff and all the players, did something that they can be proud of and could hold on to, and just making the program and making this team super happy and getting just any sort of momentum going into the off season, I think was like the biggest thing for the program. Obviously Trev at the time knew kind of who he wanted to hire, but just as fans, like there was just so much unknown going into after that game. Like when's the next, when is the announcement going to be made? Who's the guy? So on and so forth. And I think just getting that icing on the cake, I mean, you can take that momentum and take that win, even if you have different players into the start of next season with a new coach, new optimism, and just slowly start refilling that gallon of Kool-Aid that we all love to chug. It's definitely filling back up because we needed it because it was running a tad dry throughout the entire season.
That's
But
specifically us three. I think there's a lot of people that that are not in totally chugging the Kool-Aid on the Rhule-Aid. They're not chugging the
it is
Rhule-Aid.
the Rhule-Aid now. I think we can start calling it Rhule-Aid.
But I mean, it's official. So he's the head coach.
There
now,
are so many puns we can use now. I mean,
we've got
so
a
many.
whole off season to come up with some too.
But
we're in good. We're good. We're in good spirits right now.
Yeah, so we can. I'll pass it back to Nate. We kind of just quickly go over just offense, defense, special teams of the game. Just says, I know we have a lot more to touch on with Rhule and the whole Mickey situation and kind of, the future expectations that we all kind of want from Nebraska going forward. But, at least touch on the last game of the season that we all get to kind of. That's the thing that I love going back and watching just season highlights in the off season, just to kind of like get my fill of Husker football void as we kind of wait for the season to start. And it's always sucked going past, like, especially these past 4 years, because it's like, the team ends on a 6-game losing streak or, 3-game losing streak or anything like that. And now you can kind of go back and watch, like, it was a nice little cherry on top, nice little, just happy feeling that you can watch these highlights and be like, yeah, that team beat Iowa, ends the season on a great win. And that's what I'm looking forward to in the off season, getting my Husker football fill. But with that, pass it to Nate. We'll just kind of start digging in. We won't dive too much into what we want to see out of the team going forward, because we have absolutely no idea what that's going to look like. But we can just kind of.
Are you sure?
I'm only a little positive.
All right,
we can just kind of go into what we liked from the game, what we thought loved happening. I mean, we can kind of talk about special teams because they did some good and bad things at the same time. But we'll pass that to Nate there.
Yeah, so I mean, look, the offense looked competent for first time all season, maybe, if not first time in a long time. I mean, there were points in that game where I wasn't really worried for Casey's safety. Like, the offensive line actually figured out how to block a few guys. It was strange. It was a different team that I was watching, it felt like, but it was a breath of fresh air, and great way to kind of end things, I guess. I wish they would have, done that whole season, but yeah.
They got tired of us firing them into the sun, apparently.
Speaking of, we'll get to that later. I mean, as we
we know who we're gonna fire into the sun this time around.
Do we though?
Yeah, 100%. I'm pretty sure this one's already written for us. It's not funny, but
I'll let you handle that. I'll let you handle that award.
Yeah, fair enough.
But still, it was our passing game that really kept us in the game. I mean, just looking stats wise, Casey was 20 for 30, 278 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is a heck of a stat line. That is going to win you most ball games. It was impressive. He again was able to spread it around a decent bit. Trey Palmer obviously was the bright spot, the kind of go-to guy. Had the 2 touchdowns, 9 receptions, 165 yards. Like, Trey Palmer was doing Trey Palmer things, and it was a beautiful thing to watch. It was almost a redo of the Purdue game, except we actually won this time, so that was good. Otherwise, rushing was still kind of rough. We had a lot of random Ramirez that turned into not random Ramirez, and he ended up leading our backfield in rushing.
That's the one thing that we'll probably never get clarity on because the coaching staff is now gone. Is just the depth chart of how they handled the running backs this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously AJ Allen getting hurt, he was your clear number 2 behind Anthony.
Yep.
But then figuring out who the number 2 was after Anthony was like never fully explained. Never. I'm sure it was just whoever had the hot hand in practice that week, but I mean, there was no clear, concise way of, okay, this is when Anthony's hurt, like we're going to this guy automatically or anything like that. So we'll never get clarity on who really was the number 2 running back because it was everybody. It was Gabe, it was Yant, it was Ramir, Brody Belt, I think at some point too. I just don't. It was everybody.
They just rolled the dice and said, you.
I pretty much. I mean, I don't, and I think that kind of just goes back to what we kind of mentioned all after Mickey or after Scott got fired was like none of these guys were Mickey's guys that he brought in to coach. So I still believe there was some sort of disconnect between Whipple and Mickey of who really wanted to do what and how they did it. You can't convince me that there wasn't some sort of disconnect because especially when Casey got hurt too. I mean, how they handled the QB situation too was like bizarre. Obviously, we know that none of our backups were good, so I guess that's if we figured out anything, that was it. But yeah, if Ramir stays, he stays, and we keep using random Ramirez until he's not random anymore. I don't.
Yeah,
I have no idea how that's going to evolve.
Yeah, and it was just kind of strange because it went from, Ramir had 12 for 52, and then Anthony Grant had 14 for 6. So there was quite a significant drop off. And
then Ramir had the fumble in the fourth quarter, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is it. This is how it starts. This is how we lose." But I think that goes back to he didn't get. I mean, yeah, he got a lot of playing time last year, but like that was last year. This year, when you don't get enough playing time, I mean, that was probably the most rushing attempts he had all season. Yep. So it's like it's almost like getting your first game jitters out of you. I mean, it was going to happen at some point. It's just hope it wasn't backbreaking, and it almost was backbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and yeah, luckily it didn't. But there was definitely I was right there with you when he fumbled that ball. I was like, oh yeah, this is how it all starts. So luckily, again, we made enough plays down the stretch to pull out the win, but we sure knew how to make it entertaining, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Because that fumble happened at about the 6-minute mark in the fourth quarter, but Nebraska that entire fourth quarter went punt, fumble, punt, punt, and then the kneel at the end of the game. So I mean, that's just kind of another testament to what we've seen all season is Nebraska gets some sort of a lead and then the offense just goes into a shell. Because I mean, Iowa, you gave Iowa life by not scoring and giving the ball back. Because Iowa did not do anything until pretty much like the fourth quarter is when they started to finally look good. And I was like, oh, offense, you've been doing it all game. Just keep driving the ball. And they just kind of went into a shell. But I think the first thought I had, I think everybody, we don't root for injuries. And we definitely didn't want Petrus to be hurt. Because I know I said one key to the game last week was you make Spence, like you make him throw the ball. Like you beat Iowa if you make Petrus throw the ball. And it worked because he started out like 0 for 5 or 1 for 6 before he got hurt. And I was like, man, this is exactly how you beat Iowa is you make them throw the ball. And it started to work until he got hurt. And I was like, no. Because we've seen clearly happen against Minnesota too, is if you hurt their starting quarterback, the backup is clearly better for the other team, and we make them look better.
Nebraska making backups look like Brady. I'm telling you. God. Let's hope that changes. But,
it was just
that's been the MO for the past few years.
It was just a sinking thought. I was like, oh, nobody wanted Petrus to get hurt because you knew you had a better shot to do more damage if he was in the game starting quarterback for you. That is like how much I don't think I've ever rooted for a starting quarterback to be in the game than I did that game. Maybe Graham Mertz, because I knew Graham Mertz also wasn't good until he had his Heisman drive against us. But I was just one of those like, man, you make Petrus throw the ball. And those 5-6 passes that he threw incomplete were so off. I was like, oh, this is how he's going to throw the ball. Like, Scourge definitely by 90. And we were on pace until we decided to not do anything.
Yeah. That is unfortunately how it goes sometimes. we did put up a heck of a fight. I mean, we were up 24-0 at one point in the third quarter. And it's like you hope you just keep the foot on the gas at that point, and unfortunately we couldn't. And I imagine Iowa probably made some adjustments at halftime to kind of compensate for that, play a little better defense, key on some of our weaknesses. But it was a little disappointing to see that we couldn't quite, finish out on as high of a note as I feel like we could have. But
right,
still got the W, so we'll see. But yeah, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Zach on any of his thoughts on offense or anything with the Iowa game.
I'm just going to kind of sum up the game myself for me because, like I said, I only got to watch highlights and had to listen to it, which I had to listen, made it sound like it was bad. But, when you're out golfing, sometimes you don't hear everything. So it was like trying to put the pieces together from what I heard to what I saw. So, it was like, eh. So, but for me, it was ironic because I think this might've been the first time. Nah, it's not the first time, but I fully believed as I was watching highlights and listening to the game, I was like, the defense will not lose us this game. I mean, yes, like they could have, and they gave up 17 points there in the back half, but the defense was not what was scaring me about losing the game. They were holding their own for most of the game, and then finally, when Nebraska offense went into their shell and the defense was like, oh crap, we got to go back out there again. It's like, well, yeah, it turns out when you actually hold on to the ball and can, move it and not give them the ball, it turns out that, if you give your defense some rest, you give them a chance to, rest and get ready for when they have to come back out. And also, maybe change up some of their schemes and stuff. I mean, I don't know what necessarily was on the sidelines specifically, but the offense from, like I said, putting all of it together, great first half. And then normal Nebraska second half, I guess. I mean, the offense was the epitome of tale of two halves, where ironically enough, in the past few games that we've seen from Nebraska, usually it's the second half where Nebraska suddenly gets their stuff together and decides, oh, okay, now we're going to come and play when they're down by like 2 or 3 scores. So it's like, okay, I guess let's make this interesting. But no, this time they knew what they were doing in the first half. And then I guess at halftime, they decided to take what they were doing and throw that out the window. So, and I understand like when you're up 24-0, you know, they want to play conservative. And I think that's what they were essentially attempting to do. But Nebraska just isn't the team. I think they weren't the team that can play totally conservative like we see, you know, like you see good NFL and good college football teams do, where they can run and just run and run. They can have a 12-yard drive or 12 play drive that spans 75 yards. It may not end in a field goal or a touchdown or anything, but you know, they killed 8 minutes off the clock. And I think that's what Nebraska was trying to do, but obviously I don't think they had the pieces there to do it. Obviously, with the off season upon us now, a lot of stuff's going to change. But the greatest thing, I think, the highlight for me was probably special teams. Outside of the one, was it a goofy punt?
The missed field goal, you mean?
Not the muffed punt. The one that there was like a really bad punt or something. Am I missing something?
What? I'm sure there was one bad punt in there. I don't remember it.
Timmy, on our notes, we have first kicking blunder of the year is a big one from Timmy.
Yeah, that was the missed field goal.
Yeah, the missed field goal.
Yeah, because Nebraska went 10 plays up to, you know, the 32-yard field goal that he missed. And I was like, oh, crap. Like this, if we're missing those field goals, like this is, we're going to lose the game.
Yep. Sorry. It was the muffed punt and the field goal that I was mixing up. That's
the blunder was on us.
Yeah.
Because it was a 32-yard field goal that Bleak Road missed. And I was like, oh God, here we go. Like this is how the game is going to go.
Okay. Well,
especially when your offense comes out first series and like gets you into scoring position. But
yeah. Okay. Well, I got that cleared up then.
He was briefly on the fire into the sun list.
He was very briefly.
Yes.
And then he made it up 2 drives later when he made a 21-yarder.
Yep.
Didn't miss that one, so he got off the list.
Yeah. No, I mean, my overall thoughts though, totally. I think the special teams outside of that, and I mean, missed field goals. I think I've said this before, but it just seems weird that in the past, like, I don't know, 3-4 years that like kicking just hasn't been as automatic as I remember it ever being. Like now it seems like blocked kicks and missed field goals are so common. It's not common, but so much more common. And then, you know, 5-10 years ago, I remember like in high school and whatnot, like that was when you go to grab a drink or that's when you go to the bathroom because it's like, oh, it's another kick. Like it's a field goal that's within 30 yards. Like, you know, most kickers at that point apparently were just really good. So granted, we had also had Alex Henry and the like at that point too. So it was like, we didn't really have much to complain about then. So maybe we've just been unspoiled from being spoiled a while back. But
probably that.
It's a lot of it, I'm sure.
Very spoiled for a long time with always having a good kicking game. I mean, Alex Henry, the Koch brothers, that were both punters, Drew Brown, Sam Foltz. I mean, we were extremely spoiled with how many good specialists we had for quite some time.
Yeah, that's true.
Maher too. I mean, how could we forget Zerline? Well, Zerline didn't play with us, but you know he's from Nebraska. But either way, I mean,
Maher is though.
Yeah, I mean,
and Maher's still playing well.
Still playing. So I mean, we were.
Unfortunately, I think he's for the Cowboys now, which sucks. But whatever.
Unless you have him in fantasy football like I do, then he's a really good kicker.
Fair enough. Anyway, no, I think overall, for me, you know, the offense. Offense did what they needed to get it done. It was a little scary at the end there, but they did it. Defense, honestly, no real big complaints. I mean, outside of I don't blame the defense players for this one. The one play we knew they were going to run, the tight end special, you know, like, come on. you got to scheme for it, and I'm sure Bush did, but the defense. If we would have lost, the defense wouldn't have been the reason that we lost the game. In my head,
Right.
Yes, when you look at it statistically, yes, obviously they would have because obviously they gave up the points for them to win. But my point being is that the defense played well enough all throughout the game. They didn't do it. And special teams came up with some huge recovery. They came up with a lot of good plays outside the missed field goal.
2 strip sacks. The other fumble recovery was off the muff punt.
Yep.
And then the interception to end the game.
So, I mean, defense and special teams showed up, and I honestly think, if I remember correctly, I think there was a quote by Garrett Nelson that said this one just felt, after the game, he said going into it, it just felt different and like the one they needed to get. And I think this game was the perfect culmination of that. It's like Nebraska has not been good for a decade ish, and we needed some kind of hope going into the weekend because we knew we at the point that the game had started, I think we knew that Matt Rhule was hired, right? Because that was on game day, right?
Because it happened.
It was like Saturday morning at like 9 a.m. or something.
9 a.m. Yes, and we'll get into that because Trev's a genius for that. But
right, but basically, it was announced. I think it was before the Iowa game, it was during, because I remember getting the ESPN alert.
The rumor that he was finalizing a deal happened right before kickoff.
Yep. It's been a long week and a half, it feels like. And so that that all goes together, and so I think us going out with the W, even if it wasn't the greatest game we've ever played, I think it's what Nebraska needed. And I think the players felt that. I think the coaches felt that, even if they're not here anymore or not going to be here anymore. I think just a collective sigh of relief in the weirdest way, because we still went 4-8. It's not like we have any kind of thing to play for at this point, other than next year. But I think a collective sigh of relief came from the Nebraska fan base, where we all kind of said, okay, maybe now the tide is turning. But I don't know. And I know I said I was going to quick sum that up. That was way longer than it needed to be. But I'll pass it to Andy, and we can move on from the Iowa game.
Yeah. A couple quick thoughts to finish up the Iowa game for me. I mean, anytime you force 4 turnovers in a game, I know one of them was to end the game, which still helps because you win the game. But I mean, that was a 4-1 turnover ratio, and I mean you're more than likely going to win most of your games, if not all of your games, when you're forcing at least 2 turnovers a game. I mean, that's huge. The defense came out and finally proved that we knew this offense, Iowa, was not the best, even from the beginning of the year. I got a little nervous because they did start looking better leading into that game. And I was like, okay, maybe they're starting to finally click and, realize it maybe too late in the season. But defense showed up, shelled out. Just overall, I mean, you couldn't ask for just a better defensive, momentum game and just performance to, win you the game, essentially. The muff punt was just like, I've always wondered why Garrett Nelson is always on special teams. I'm like, why would you put one of your best defensive linemen, edge rushers, on special teams? And just to see him kind of chug after that ball on special teams and get the muff punt, I was like, good for him. He needs that. And then, even on the strip sack, when he picked it up and started running, I'm like, oh my God, if Garrett gets this touchdown, I think he's just going to spike it into the wall, and I think he's going to take the flag. He has got to me, Gronk energy vibes of just this big dude that just loves to just celebrate every single big play. Now, he's probably smarter than Gronk. I think we all can probably agree with that. But that's what Garrett gives off to me. And I feel like, oh man, if he scores that touchdown on the strip sack, I mean, that ball is going out of the stadium.
Now, hold on. if we let's remember that comment that Garrett Nelson is smarter than Gronk, because if Garrett Nelson is making USAA commercials in like 10 years, I am 100% coming back to talk about that.
Well,
Don't get me wrong, it's a great business decision for Gronk, but I'm gonna laugh and be like, okay, we were on to something at that point. Like we knew what
yes.
we were talking about.
Yeah,
Putting a pin in that one.
but yeah, I mean, overall defense played well. Knowing what we know now with the offense, Trey Palmer, I mean, just a great end of the game season for Trey Palmer and getting his draft stock up. I mean, that's 2 touchdowns, a long touchdown, over 100 yards catching. I mean, just a good way for Trey to end his season and career at Nebraska. And we all obviously we want him to do well in the NFL because you know, as much as Mickey and everything that's happened with him, I mean, he's still a product of Mickey Joseph being coached as a wide receiver, and we know the 2 diamonds in the NFL, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. I mean, I'm sure Trey's looking at that too. I'm like, man, that's probably hopefully going to be me one day, just another Mickey Joseph wide receiver product. So, it sucks that he's not going to come back this year as much as we would have loved him to come back. Can't fault him for that. We all kind of probably had a feeling that he was gonna go. Even
he broke the record, correct?
Yeah, he broke the single season receiving yard record over Stanley Morgan, who is with the Bengals currently.
When that officially happened, that was the sign. I was like, he's going to the NFL.
Even
and
if
I'm not saying that I'm not saying he couldn't have done it again next year, but with everything that we kind of felt with the tide turning, no one knows. And when people were already speculating that, that's not a good sign for Mickey, especially what we know now. Right. It's like, all in regards, like, good for Trey. Like, but, obviously, go kill it in the NFL.
And he's an example of the transfer portal, just, being able just to find just some sort of diamond in the rough transfer portal talent player coming here for 1 year, breaking a single season receiving record at Nebraska, and then going to the NFL. I mean, that's as much as you want him to stay longer. I mean, that's the idea of the portal, is you go somewhere to better yourself for a year or two, and then you go on to the NFL. And Trey is just a nice prime example of that as well.
If you want an even better example that worked out for us last year, look at Samori Toure.
Yep, he's currently.
I wouldn't say he's killing it in the NFL because Green Bay is not the greatest team in the world this year, but I'm pretty sure he's starting.
Sorry, Abby, if you're listening.
I mean, I'm not. Watching that game when they played the Eagles, that was a little heart-wrenching the whole time until we officially got the win. But regardless, I mean, he's doing really well at Green Bay.
Yes,
and not only that, he's playing with Aaron Rodgers, which, as much as I don't care for the guy as a person, as a quarterback, he's fantastic. Well, right. He has been. I think he's a little off this year, but whatever. But anyway,
I think finishing up the Iowa game. I know I don't remember the exact text I sent you guys that night, but I was just like, this was all before we knew what happened with Mickey, for context, but. I kind of said something along the lines of like, for everything that, Mickey's been through, the player's been through this entire season. And for us, I mean, just to get that kind of win and going out on top, beating Iowa was probably like not the best thing in the world, but it's definitely up there of like the better moments in recent Nebraska history. It was such a nice way to just go out on top and, like I said, beating Iowa is never not going to be fun. I mean, that is just it's so easy to just dig on Iowa, and we love it. And just beating them, you can finally like, yes, we have this for a whole year, just to keep that over their heads. But with that, we'll just kind of transfer into, I think we'll just address the Mickey Joseph drama here before we get into the new era of Nebraska football, that is Matt Rhule. But also,
we're gonna get the downer news out of the way before we get to the positive
before the optimism that'll end the final episode of this season. But But again, if you've also been living under a rock, even leading up to what happened, I mean, there was all sorts of speculation of, is Mickey going to stay? What's going to happen with him? Is he going to be offered the same job? If he doesn't, where's he going to go? So on and so forth. And then I think it was like 4:30, 5 o'clock somewhere on Wednesday that I'd started seeing on Twitter of like an Omaha journalist saying like, there's been a major arrest within the Nebraska football program. We'll get you details. LPD is going to release something in the next 30 or so minutes or whatever. And I remember looking at like all the comments and seeing like everybody's like, oh, it's Mickey. It's something to do with Mickey, so on and so forth. And my heart started to sink a little bit. And I was like, oh crap, what did he do? And I think I remember Nate sent that tweet from Priscilla a couple days before, something about like the truth will set you free or whatever, was like some sort of cryptic tweet. And I was like, I'm just going to go check and see what's up. And, I tried to look and it said that her Twitter account has deleted. And I was like, oh, this is not good. That if all these Mickey comments are true and so on and so forth. And, I think 30 minutes later, the report got released that, Mickey was, I don't remember the exact charge, but he was just arrested for strangulation and, third-degree domestic assault.
I think it was domestic. It was either domestic violence or domestic abuse in the third degree, with strangulation.
Yes.
I know it was. I was domestic something in the third degree.
Suspicion of strangulation and third-degree domestic assault.
Yep.
So then, kind of right then and there, I don't want to speculate too much on what happened. You can just go on Twitter if you're really curious. The whole affidavit report is out there, which generally, I don't know how much the public usually sees of those. Our lawyer friends that listen would know a lot more about that. But you never want to make assumptions, and the whole situation is just sad. I mean, that's just like the one word I keep coming back to is it's just sad. It's sad for him. It's sad for, whoever was involved. We just, they're never going to release the victim's name, but you can put two and two together of, if it's domestic, it's usually probably going to be a wife or a partner, spouse relation somewhere to the Mickey. So,
whoever it is, thoughts out to them.
Right.
Like,
It's
regardless.
The whole thing is just sad. And then, kind of looking forward from that is, it kind of answered all our questions of how Mickey's future at Nebraska. And technically, his contract was set to expire at the end of this month, just through the university. So he technically is still a paid employee, but Trev came out and said, like, yeah, we'll put him on administrative leave. I don't know if they're just gonna like just put him on leave until the contract expires and then obviously not renew it and just let it expire, or if they're gonna terminate it. That's a whole other logistics issue, but he's still technically a part of the Nebraska football staff. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, Matt Rhule had said like he was planning to meet with Mickey on Wednesday, and obviously that meeting didn't happen, knowing what we know now. So it's just kind of like it's just sad that, somebody in his position, he pretty much, the sky was the limit for him and his career going forward. And now it's all, I want to speculate if it's all gone, but, just looking at it right now, it's pretty much gone of what he could do coaching wise, so on and so forth. And, it's just sad because who knows what Matt Rhule had planned with that meeting and what was going to happen or anything, but whatever it was, not going to happen anymore. But yeah, I don't have much more to say about that. I mean, underlying point is just, it's sad that, everybody, it's sad for everybody involved. But you live with the consequences, and that's pretty much the bottom line is he has to live the rest of his life with what he did. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think the fallout to us from a player wise and recruitment wise, I don't think is shocking at all. I think even if this didn't happen and Mickey didn't get an offered job back to Nebraska, I think the players that left and recruits that decommitted from Nebraska probably still would have happened. Whether Mickey, they might have stayed if Mickey was on the staff and none of that happened. But I think if Mickey wasn't even offered to be on staff, I think the players that did leave and decommit probably still would have happened anyways. But that's just my own personal thought for just seeing how many that like decommitted and, opened up recruitment or left to the transfer portal and all that. But it's more. I'll probably stop talking about that. I'll pass it to you guys if you have any other thoughts you want to chime in on the situation or whatnot.
It's tough. I mean, I was waiting for Nate to say something, and I could tell we were both just looking at like, what do we say? I mean, regardless, it just sucks. I mean, because now I think, and I don't want this to just become. I don't want my point that I'm going to say to be like, oh, all he cares about is football. No, because I don't. Like, obviously, like I said already, like
Life is bigger than football.
life is bigger than football, and again, whoever the victims are, all of our thoughts go out to them. Obviously, I'm speaking for you guys, but I don't think you disagree with me. But it's now we're gonna also just have this what if that didn't happen, and what if he was retained, or what if, and I'm not gonna sit here and live on what ifs by any means, but who knows what, and we also still don't know who our current wide receiver coach is going to be. I mean, we're making total speculations now that it's not going to be Mickey, but I guess there's a chance that it still might be. But unfortunately, if being married to a lawyer has taught me anything, is that even while the courts still have time to decide and do their thing, the court of public opinion just doesn't care. And Mickey's outlook, I don't think he's done coaching. I don't think he's going to be done coaching. I mean, we've had stories like this in the past from other coaches, not Nebraska specifically, just in general in the college football landscape. And, people find work elsewhere. I mean, it happens. Obviously, in order for that to probably happen, he'll have to go through some, I don't know if rehab is the right word, but some kind of program to get back to whatever normal is, or I don't know. I'm kind of spitting out of my butt here, but regardless, it's just unfortunate that we even have to talk about it, because again, I think after the win against Iowa, there was so much hype because, and I say so much hype as in, I think there was a good level of hype because, which we'll get into after this to kind of bring the mood back up. I think with Rhule coming on, I think a lot of people were like, oh, I think, he might keep Mickey because part of the deal with bringing Matt Rhule on is the Panthers help pay for his contract so that he has a pretty good amount of money for his assistant pool. And so we're like, that kind of matches up. Like, let's keep Mickey because he's a really good players coach. And I think that's the part that really kills me is he's really good for the players, but look at look at now. Like, is he? Like, I don't know. My parents always taught me the one thing as a male is you don't put your hand on a woman. Like, sorry, in that way. So it's like watching somebody that I actually respected coming through the program and finishing out the year the way he did, and thinking, he might not be here at Nebraska next year, and that's okay. But he's got a bright future ahead of him. Only to see that was just like, I don't know. It's tough. And now that we're going back through it, it's like, man, I just kind of wish it didn't happen. I mean,
it's hard to look back at like the post game comments after Iowa, the press conference Monday for Matt Rhule, like even Saturday when the announcement was like, everybody thanking Mickey, respecting Mickey. I think Trev said at the press conference, it's like, I had respect for Mickey, when he took the interim job. I have even more respect now for what he did. And then, 2 days later that happened. It's just like, man, you have so many nice things to say about Mickey and what he did during the season and what he had to go through. And then this happens and you're just like, what it's like, what do you even do? You you said all these things and then just somebody makes a very bad poor decision and then all of a sudden everything you just said to credit that person is just like gone. But yeah, I get the feeling it's like hopelessness of it's a crappy situation for everybody.
But I mean, with that, it happened, and as Huskers, we got to move on, which is funny because I have a comment that I want to allude to with, the Matt Rhule press conference. So I'll give it to Nate because I don't know if you have any additional comments that you wanted to make, but we can kind of circle back around. So.
Yeah, no, nothing too much different from what you guys have said. It was definitely just a tough situation. I mean, he was a guy that a lot of just Nebraskans kind of looked up to, and I'm sure a lot of kids players were looking up to, and it's tough to see someone that's a role model like that just kind of completely throw everything to the wind in that way. And yeah, you never want to see it, and it's your heart goes out to the victims, whoever they might be. If you're ever in that situation, go to the gym, go for a run. Just not that way. There's
Go do literally anything else.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Like, even just go take a drive. I understand Lincoln traffic is terrible, but that's better than that.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's overall just disappointing to hear a guy that I feel like a lot of people, everyone within the state of Nebraska just thought was a really stand-up guy and was going to be just a really good leader of young men. And just to see that news come out was just heart-wrenching. And so, yeah, again, heart goes out to the victims. Hopefully they're doing okay. Hopefully they can get through this process as best they can. Obviously their lives will be a lot different in a lot of senses, but hopefully they will have the strength to kind of carry on and continue living. So, but with that, we can get into the exciting news of Matt Rhule hired as the Nebraska head coach.
Let's chug the Rhule-Aid, boys. not to take away from what we talked about, but let's end this thing on let's end this thing on a good note.
31st,
I think 31st,
coach, yeah, 31st coach in program history. But
9 a.m. on a Saturday.
I remember waking up and I was just kind of sitting in bed. I just turned on game day just because it's what I usually do on Saturday mornings of college football, and scrolling through Twitter, and then I'm starting to see like just some the local media, like, look for this to drop, so on and so forth. And I'm like, oh man, it's just like, is this smoke now a fire? Is this what we're getting to now? And then Nebraska football, like their official account, dropped the official news that Matt Rhule was hired. 9 a.m. on a Saturday. And I know it took me about a couple minutes to figure it out, but I was like, Trev is a marketing genius.
I'm pretty sure Matt Rhule did like a FaceTime interview or something with game day that morning too.
And that's like Trev, he could have waited till Sunday during NFL like he did with Scott's firing. Because, he dropped that news at 11 a.m. on a Sunday before kickoff for Sunday night or Sunday for, I think it was the first week of NFL too. And I was like, man.
No, the Scott Frost news. Or wait, you're talking with him fired?
Fired, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant when he got hired. I was like, no, that was during his bowl game.
That was Bill Moose. We don't talk about that name. No, but like, yeah, when Scott got fired, I was like, before kickoff on the first week of NFL football, I was like, man, good for you. Way to get some attention on the first week of NFL football. But it's smart because then at that point I had to get like my laptop off because I had one game on one TV on kickoff, one screen on big noon kickoff, and I was like, Trev is a genius because both shows talked about it, the hiring that was the day of the Michigan Ohio State game too, when they were both there at Ohio, and I was like, man, you get your you get 2 primetime kickoff shows to talk about your hiring on the day of Michigan Ohio State, and get game day to get Matt Rhule to FaceTime in on your show. Like, A+ timing, Trev. I mean, that's just it's just a genius move and we knew Trev was like a very marketed, like TV savvy guy. Like, we knew this was going to happen. It was just when and how was Trev going to do it. And 9 a.m. as the kickoff shows were getting going, I'm like, good for you, Trev. That's good way to get 2 shows to talk about your school on probably the biggest college football game of the year.
I will maintain that a lot of people, and I understand why, like, athletic directors, live and die by their hires at this point. But even if Matt Rhule doesn't work out with the way that Trev has handled things, just in general, I think he deserves to stay. Now, granted, I think what's going to be the real linchpin there is not necessarily the Matt Rhule hire. I think the Fred Hoiberg thing, which is basketball, but I think he's got a bit more to prove. But I mean, obviously, with Nebraska basketball beating Creighton, woohoo! By the way,
his seat got a little.
That was pretty cool. I think Trev deserves a little bit longer of a rope than previous ADs got. So, anyway, that was my own point.
Yeah, so I mean, outside of that, I mean, then you have the entire college football day to talk about, Nebraska hiring their coach, so on and so forth. And then you get the press conference that coming Monday, get the whole introduction fanfare. And, I think we had all said somewhere during this coaching search, I mean, he definitely, Matt Rhule, I think we've all stated, was not your home run hire. He wasn't your sexy hire. He was just almost just a guy. He was a hire that I think what I've said is like a hire that Nebraska needed over what they wanted. And, look at the wants. Fickle was probably a top of our list no matter what time of the coaching search that we all wanted. But Trev kind of explained, like, Matt Rhule is the guy that Nebraska needs right now. And I think from what was available and what could have happened, I think that was the correct hire that Trev did make. Rhule kind of fluctuated on our coaching list all year of, is he at the top? If he's somewhere in the top 3, the middle of the pack, so on and so forth. But he was always a name that kind of kept showing up on our lists as we went throughout this coaching search. But yeah, I think it was the correct hire that Nebraska needed at this moment in time. Because you needed someone that has a proven record of building programs. And I know the point that I saw online is like, why he failed at Carolina, so on and so forth. I mean, you take away the NFL aspect of Matt Rhule, and he is a really, really good college coach. And the 2 examples I always give that when people ask me is like, you look at Saban and Harbaugh, obviously, they're very much outliers in this situation because of what they have done. But both went to the NFL, failed at the NFL, came back to college, and are now the top programs in the country right now. Saban failed at Miami, Harbaugh failed at San Francisco, and then they come back to college and they, are proven that they're better college coaches. And that's just, some people are built for college, some people are built for NFL. And I think I had mentioned this yesterday too, the Jamie Chadwell hire, who was also kind of a name that, popped up on our list. It's like, we all thought that he would probably go to a Power 5 school at some point, and he's going to Liberty from Coastal Carolina. So it's the same situation as like some guys are built for Power 5, some guys are built for Group of 5. You can almost apply that to Scott. I mean, Scott might be a group of 5 coach rather than a power 5 coach. So, it's not, one is always not for everybody else. And, I'm hoping we're right with Matt Rhule, is maybe the NFL is not for him, but he is a really, really good college coach. You just look at what he did at Temple, what he did at Baylor. Um, I'm not saying that our first season will be 1-11. It also could be 1-11 next year. If proven history keeps on track with how Matt Rhule starts his first seasons, but it just, even in a short amount of time, by year 3, he has those programs at 10-win seasons, playing for bowl games that are ranked and all that. So I'm sure Trev took that into consideration too. Is we got to get a hire that, it's got to be someone that is going to be here to help us build what we need and lay the foundation for what we need. In case Matt Rhule does go on to somewhere else, the foundation is set for like a Luke Fickell to come in. Because I think what I told you guys is, Fickell is not, I don't think he is a coach that is a rebuild coach. I think he is like a plug and play coach, like Urban was, or like, what Ryan Day probably is he's a coach that you just plug into a program just to coach because your current coach went somewhere else. I don't, that's much as we would have loved Luke Fickell here, because that rumor was almost true. And
I'm pretty sure he was like second on the list.
correct.
It was Matt Rhule and then Luke Fickell.
Yeah. And
I'd be willing to bet there was some actual fire behind that
probably
too.
And knowing that he did leave Cincinnati to go to Wisconsin, it's almost like, man, there was a real probably good shot that Luke Fickell could be the current coach too. But I still go by the fact that Rhule is what Nebraska needs at this current moment. And it's just, we look at what I started out. He's not the home run hire, he's not the sexy hire, he's just the hire that we didn't need someone to win the press conference. But boy, did he win the press conference.
Off-season champs, like 7 years in a row, baby. Here we go.
All I was expecting out of that press conference was just like, what's your vision here? What do you want to do? What do you want to see this program? And everything he said, I was like, oh my God, like, just keep pouring keep pouring the Kool-Aid down my throat. Just keep doing it, because I am eating all of this up. And he unintentionally won the press conference by far. And I think I saw a lot of people say that on Twitter too. It was like, man, what he said is just like everything that the Nebraska program brand wants to hear.
Didn't someone it just hit me when you said that. Didn't someone edit his Wikipedia page? 2022 Nebraska want to know off season, and then 2023 was 0-0 with a star, like it's still progress. I thought that was hilarious. Like somebody was on top of that after it happened. Like that was amazing. It was fantastic.
Like the one quote that I wrote down that I really, or I guess there's 2 quotes. The first one was, I think someone had probably asked him about like the rebuild. And his exact quote was like, it will be hard, it may take time, but we will get it done here. And I think that's what Nebraska needs right now, is like, you need someone that is going to be dedicated to help build this back to where it was. And knowing what we know, what happened with Scott, obviously his heart, his intentions, leadership wasn't as all in as we were led to believe. So Rhule made that evidently clear that is what he wants to do and what Nebraska needs to do. The other thing was, of kind of how he wanted his team to look is you win games at the line of scrimmage. And that is 100% what the Big Ten is. Outside of Ohio State and their spread. And that's also another interesting thing to look with Wisconsin is I don't know how much Wisconsin's going to stick to what they've been doing for 20 years now that Fickell's there, because Fickell is definitely not a I formation run the ball guy. He is definitely a spread offense.
So I just have a question though.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Rhule said that, and for the past 5-6 weeks, we've said the offensive line needs to be fired into the sun. And then he comes and says that at his press conference. Is Matt Rhule a confirmed listener of the Nebraskabilities podcast?
He had a lot of off-season time
Some might
sitting in
say.
Carolina.
I mean,
he was.
I'm not saying he is, but I'm also not saying he isn't. So
but
maybe he's like, these three guys know what they're talking about. And then we're gonna be like, no, go with your gut, not us.
that was my other quote that stood out to me. It was like, that is exactly what Nebraska needs right now. Is this past season proved that you can have talent at receiver, quarterback, running back, tight end. Does not matter if you have no line. Casey getting hurt is obviously a product of our defensive line or offensive line, not blocking at all. So him coming here and saying that, whether he, obviously with time we'll see if he can prove that, and so forth and so forth, on and so forth. But just him saying that might have been just coach speak to win the press conference. But I think if you even go back and just look at his stats at Temple and Baylor, I mean, that's who he is. And I think he is definitely a slightly defensive minded coach over any sort of, I mean, I think as his time went on, he kind of grew into more of an offensive role. But I think just his style is definitely defensive line and physical play. Just from the stats that I've looked up and just kind of his progression. Definitely at Baylor, he kind of turned more into an offensive minded coach. And I still would be curious if he had stayed at Baylor instead of going to the NFL, how good they could have been. Because I mean, even like that, his last season at Baylor when they were, I think number 8 at one point. I think a lot of people have looked at like, this, if Rhule stays here, I mean, Baylor can be like a powerhouse going forward because he was getting him to that point. So I think if he had another year or two at Baylor, I would have liked to have seen just how his team evolved and played on offense and defense. But those were long-winded initial thoughts on Rhule. So we'll just kind of pass it around to you guys. We have a new coach. That's all.
Yeah, so I think my first initial impressions of Matt Rhule are just that he seems kind of like a salt of the earth type guy. Seems pretty relatable. I know in a lot of his interviews he's talked about how he just enjoys being a leader of young men and just kind of molding student athletes and changing them from, or making them different than kind of how he found them. I know that was one of the things I had listened to, like a press conference he had while he was at Baylor, and just trying to get the most out of the kids. And I think that can go a long way, especially here in Nebraska, and especially after some of the fallout that has recently occurred. I think that he is in the right place at the right time is just kind of what this feels like. And he just seems like a complete breath of fresh air compared to what Scott was, where he was more of the recluse kind of holier than thou type feeling kind of guy, whereas Matt Rhule mentioned where he wants to be in the community and go out to restaurants and stuff. And he's already been seen at different restaurants. And I know he went to a brewery somewhere in Nebraska as well. And so he's been.
Might I inquire a little jab at a former coach unintentionally that he might have said intentionally?
That was probably intentional. Let's be honest.
There might have been something there.
Yeah.
Might.
If you had lived under a rock under Scott's tenure, if you saw Scott anywhere in Lincoln, you probably won some sort of kind of award.
That wasn't Gate 25.
That wasn't Gate 25 or the Ashland Golf Course. Not to speculate on rumors, but if you want to go to the Husker subreddit, you can probably find something in there.
Yep.
You might have to search back a little bit. That's been a while now.
It's been a while. It's definitely there.
There's
some smoke.
There's some
sure.
stuff there. There's some stuff there. Oof.
We won't speculate on rumors. We'll just we just tell the
It might be a
people.
little late for that. we might have just done that.
We will just tell the people what we have heard, and we'll let everybody else make their own opinion and do their own research.
Exactly.
Good save. I like that.
Kind of like Kirk Cousins with doing his own research on COVID.
Oh.
Had to get that in there.
Or half the US. But no, another thing that has really, I don't know, bought me into him, I guess, is just that he hasn't shied away from his failure in the NFL. Like, he just embraces it, and he said, it wasn't a good fit for me. Doesn't mean it was the worst time in my life, but it was still just kind of a part of his kind of growth, I guess. And it's not something he's going to shy away from, and he's willing to just kind of own it. And I think that can go a long ways going forward. And so just, I don't know. I've been impressed with him so far. His press conference definitely won me over, and just his willingness to go around to the different Lincoln schools his first day or his day after in the office just to talk to the coaches, which is something that a lot of the high school coaches in Lincoln said just hadn't happened in over a decade.
And that's to your point is I think there was an article, I think when Rhule left to go to Carolina back in 2020 out of Waco, is a lot of like the local high school coaches in Texas really appreciated Rhule just being like involved in their high schools in the community there. And they were sad to see him go just because Rhule had such good relations with all the high schools in his area. So I think that's definitely, just if you follow his Twitter, I mean, he just posts pictures of the different high schools. He's on his small town Nebraska trip right now. I mean, it just shows that like he's trying to make an effort to put a name and a face to the program and to the state that he wants to be involved in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think that can go a long ways because, I mean, yes, there's probably some of the homer take where we need to recruit Nebraska to be good,
but I mean, you look at how many in-state recruits we have lost to FC. I mean, he mentioned that during the press conference too. It's like, how many in-state players do you lose to an FCS school when you have an FBS Big Ten school in your home state, and Omaha and Lincoln players and elsewhere want to go to Iowa or go, North Dakota State? I mean, we've lost plenty of Omaha players to North Dakota State. Plenty of tight ends to Iowa. I mean, it's just, we lost Zane Flores, the best Class A state quarterback this year, to Oklahoma State because Scott didn't have interest in him at all. And it's
might be another shot at the previous guy.
Yeah, it's just
maybe.
I mean, maybe. you lose the top.
That one's fair. That one was fair.
I mean, you lose this top-rated quarterback in the state to Oklahoma State because your previous coach didn't go talk to him or have interest in him, and it's just like I could list off plenty of other Omaha examples of who we've lost to North Dakota State, and Iowa and all that. It's just, like he said at the press conference, I mean, you shouldn't be losing in-state guys to FCS schools when you have a Big Ten FBS school literally at your back door that you can hard sell recruit to. It's just, I won't go down the list because I don't know how many people care about how many random college names that I have stored in the back of my brain of players we've lost to North Dakota State, because there's been quite a few.
Yeah. But again, it speaks kind of what he wants to do and where he wants to take the program, that he's willing to put in even already this first week that he's just been head coach. He's putting in the legwork. He's gone to Scottsbluff, gone to Norfolk, been to all the Lincoln schools, been to the Omaha schools. And it's like you can tell he's passionate about what he does, and he wants to get this moving in the right direction. And I think that is going to pay dividends down the road at some point. So that's definitely exciting to see, and definitely wins me over. That's for sure. Not too difficult, but
Right.
But yeah, I'm overall pretty excited about it. I think 12 wins easily next year is within grasp. So, other than that, I'll just go ahead and pass it over to Zach for any of his thoughts.
I mean, you guys summed it up pretty well. I don't have too much more to add. However, I did decide that we should go back and look at the pad that we had that was about when Scott got fired. We made a whole document about what we wanted
the
for coaches
coaching name.
discussions.
Oh
So
no!
this is actually funny because this was made after Scott Frost was fired, and so we put a note
can't
or we put
imagine.
a bullet point like what do we want to see, and so what we wanted to look for in a coach, and there were
This
4
was,
bullet points.
What, 3 games after? Yeah, this is probably after Georgia Southern, right?
Yep, pretty
Before
much.
we figured out that the offensive line was much more of a problem than it was.
Right. So the big 4 things that we looked for were style of play, emphasize building from inside out. Just remember that. And then culture, and then what realistically needs to happen to keep Mickey or interview him for the head coach position, which at the time was there
The realistic
because
possibility.
well, yeah, that was a very real possibility because, there was something that he added a lot of value at the time. And so we thought somebody needs to see the value in Mickey and come in and keep him on staff. Obviously, with hindsight being what it is now, it's probably not going to happen regardless. But that said, overall, when you look at what Matt Rhule has done in college football, and I'll get to the NFL on my points in a second. When you look at what he's done in the NFL, he took over a Temple team, which I don't know about many people out there in terms of our listeners or anybody that might be new to our podcast. But I don't know many people that are going out of their way to watch Temple football. But he made them pretty good. Like he made them a contender in something. I don't remember. He got them pretty high up there. I know he got them to a couple bowl games. I think I could be wrong on the records there, but regardless, he made
for sure.
Okay, yeah, I mean he got Temple to 2 bowl games, and that's Temple. And I'm not discrediting them now, but at the time, no one was going out of their way to watch Temple football.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the flip side, when he went to Baylor, he took over Baylor in a very, very bad spot. And then his first year was pretty rough, but then his second year, you saw a lot of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and yes, and like I said, I'll get to the NFL point for me specifically, but I think when you look at his coaching pedigree in the college football landscape, he has a knack of being able to take teams, and it might be a year, it might take a year, but that second year, you're probably going to see some good results. And the thing is, I don't think we're on the level of Baylor or Temple when he went there to those places.
Right.
I actually think that we could see a 5-7 team, a 6-6 team next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not putting the expectation on that because with the way that the college football landscape is now, is like you can't expect that because the transfer portal is a thing, NIL is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the other thing that I took from it is that he was asked specifically about his thoughts on NIL and the fact that when he was in the NFL, that's when the college football, that's when it all kind of changed. And he said, basically, he's like, I'm all for kids coming to get paid for using their name and likeness because they're putting on a show and they're putting on a product. But he also specified but he wants kids that want to play for Nebraska too. Like he says, yeah, it's great that they want to get paid. That's fine. And he's okay with that. But he also wants people that are going to play for Nebraska. And I think that is one of the biggest things to take from it because he didn't shy away from NIL, where I know like you're kind of split on a lot of fan bases where like some even coaches in the NFL, some coaches in college football are even like, we don't necessarily like NIL. I think it's problematic. He didn't necessarily shy away from it. He didn't necessarily say that he loved it. I mean, he kind of did, but he didn't say it in a way that he was praising it like, oh, I'm going to use that to my advantage. He is, but that's the thing is like all of his answers that he gave in his press conference were so logical, but were also so honest. And then going to the NFL thing, a lot of people have been like, well, he failed in the NFL. Like, well, I mean, I don't want to say, well, yeah, because but like you guys said, Saban failed there. I don't think necessarily. I don't know if I'd call Jim Harbaugh necessarily a failure because he did okay.
He did
fine. He did. He was
championship games.
I mean,
yeah,
But I mean, but like at the end of the day, like if you look at his record, he was pretty middling. But when Michigan called and said, "Hey, we want to offer you a job," he took that. Like, but regardless,
and now you look at where they are. Back-to-back years, they've beaten Ohio State. Back-to-back Big Ten champs. Back-to-back playoff appearances. It's
exactly
just, like it's NFL failure or lack of success is not always related to college either.
Right.
And obviously Saban is another example, and we know what Saban's done.
And I think, granted, like you said, they're outliers, but
they're
like
very much outliers.
Still, like
they're examples.
The NFL is a different coaching style than college football is, and I think it's hit upon because Matt Rhule even said he wants to build good kids from the program, and I think that's the key. Is like in college football, you're dealing with kids from 18 to 23, maybe, unless you've got like a kicker that's like 34. I don't remember who that was exactly. There was some team that had that, but I mean, the point being is that like Matt Rhule knows who he's working with in terms of college football, in terms of bringing kids in. And I'm not discrediting that when guys go to the NFL that they're not potentially still kids. And I put quotes on around that, but it's like, you are not the same person you are from the age of 18 when you go to 23, especially, and I mean, I don't know this personally, but like from football standpoints, like if you're going to the NFL, your future is spoken for. So basically, once you're in the NFL and if you're on a team, like if you're drafted and you're on a team and you're officially signed as a rookie, then you have your future essentially spoken for as long as you can make it work, which is different than working with college kids trying to make it onto the team. And obviously, we don't know if this is going to work at Nebraska. Any coach we were going to hire was always going to be, a 50-50 shot if it was going to be good or not. But like with Matt Rhule's success in the past, I think it speaks to the fact that I think college is where he is destined to be. And I think that's okay that he went to the NFL to find that out.
Right.
Does that mean he doesn't go back to the NFL in the future? Absolutely not. But regardless, I think, and I think, Andy, you said this, I think, Nate, you said the same thing, is that Matt Rhule was the hire that Nebraska needed.
Yes.
I remember even saying this, I think Thursday before the game. I think on Thanksgiving when we were all texting each other, I said, I so badly would love for Fickell to be the next head coach. Having said that, though, and having a little bit of hindsight, I don't think Fickell would have succeeded fully here. I think he would have been fine. I think he would have recruited well, and I think he would have done okay. But I think what we needed that Rhule brings in is an identity. And I think Rhule is the perfect fit for bringing back stability to Nebraska football. And if there's anything that Nebraska football has needed in the past decade since Bo Pelini was fired, is an identity. And I know specifically that Nate said that a few weeks ago. Is that the one thing that we've lacked is an identity. And I think Matt Rhule is the one that's going to bring that.
Right.
Now, again, I know I said this, but does that mean he is the successful hire? We don't know. And he's not the home run hire on paper, but here's the thing. Is he the home run hire that comes in, in the ninth inning pinch hitting to get us the win?
Mhm.
Maybe we don't know. But like on paper, sure, he's not necessarily a home run hire. But with everything that I've just said that we've all said, and on top of that, I know like I sent the thing about him going to that brewery. I think it was out in Scotts Bluff. And
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure I could be wrong, so somebody correct me if I am, but like I'm pretty sure like December 3rd out in Scotts Bluff, there was like a crap ton of snow on the ground. Like the road conditions weren't necessarily great. And he's out in Scotts, like I mean, they might have been fine, but I mean, like still, like he got to Nebraska in that same week. He's out in Scotts Bluff in not great conditions, out and recruiting kids. And
Mhm.
not only that, he's taking pictures with the local brewery or whatever. Like, you know, he's been very upfront about taking pictures about where he's at locally and making a point that he's like, and granted that he's a new coach, of course, that's the kind of thing you do, but like
Mhm.
he seems genuine in his ability and his willingness to do that. He's going to, if it's not him, his coaches,
Mhm.
like they all seem like they're very much genuinely wanting to make Nebraska football work. And I think the other thing is that because it can work here,
Mhm.
like it's possible. Like they have the stuff to do it.
It's proven. I mean,
They
you.
have the coaching ability to do it. They have a new facility that's going to open up in
I
this
was gonna say
offseason.
that's exactly Zach. I mean, you
Like
have an
we
athletic
have the
department
stuff.
that is going to pump money into you and into this program. You have a fan base that is going to be here. You know, think what you want about the sellout streak. Wishy washy, whatever. You have a mostly, if not almost full stadium watching a 4-8 football team every single Saturday. A
Hmm.
3-9 team last year. I mean, you are going to have the fans behind you. You're going to have the athletic department pumping budgets and monies into that program. You're going to have all the resources that you need to succeed here. You just need the right guy. Tennessee is a perfect example of what they did this year.
100%.
I mean, they missed the playoff. Yeah. So what? I mean, Tennessee, just like us, has really not been relevant since the 90s. And then they have a season like they just had this year. I mean, it takes
Imagine what next year is going to be for
yeah,
Tennessee.
their second year head coach, gets them up and almost ready to play for an SEC championship game. But I mean, that's just it shows you like it takes the right guy at the right place and the right time. And
Absolutely.
what we've said all along is that we think that the rule is what Nebraska needs at this moment in time.
I'd
I
agree.
and I people this hire, no matter who Trev hired, people are going to be divided. It didn't matter if it was Mickey, if it wasn't Mickey, if it was somebody like Rhule, not somebody like Rhule. Like you're going to have both sides of the spectrum of this hire. And what I say to those people is like, Nebraska hasn't been good for 20 years. Like we know this, even during the Bo years. I mean, yeah, you're having winning seasons, but Bo could never win those big games. And I know that's been like a criticism of Rhule, and we'll see. He has to prove it to us as time will tell. But Scott never had a winning season. Mike Riley had one winning season. He went to a bowl after the winning season, but he went to two bowls technically, but he was 5-7 in that one year that he went to the bowl. Matt Rhule's had 5 winning seasons out of 7 as a college head coach. And you haven't had one the past 4 years with Scott. Technically 5, I guess, if you count this season. Or was this 5? I don't know. I don't remember. Either
I
way,
think we're on 6, aren't we?
it all blends together at this point. But
I think this year was 6 because we didn't make it
Yeah.
onto a bowl with Riley for the last year, never with
Correct.
Scott, and then this year.
And Scott's best record was 5-7. So I mean, if you tell me that like, we can always do better, and I was like, you can't, because this program is in such a bad state that we're mediocre. We have to prove that we are not mediocre anymore. You technically you can say we haven't been good since Bo, but we were not good with Bo either. I mean, we had 9-4 seasons, but those 4 losses, you're getting your butt kicked by Wisconsin by 30 points every year.
In the third quarter,
You're losing to Iowa, every year, and it's just like,
Yeah.
those are the games that, go 9-4 you want. But like I said earlier, like those are the games that as a personal fan, those are the games I want to win and want to beat every single year is Wisconsin and Iowa. And now Minnesota because I hate PJ Fleck. But gotta respect what he's done up there. I mean, PJ Fleck, as much as I hate
him and
the
still
guy,
hate him.
Yeah.
It's like Tom Brady. I don't hate. I don't like the guy, but respect him.
I mean, he's made Minnesota more relevant again, just of what he's done up there. So it's just like it takes the right guy to get what you need to rebuild a program. And first year under new head coaches, unless you're Ryan Day, and get handed the keys to a Mercedes, like he did, are generally going to suck. And I think we as a fan base should not set like a record expectation next year. I know we will because we want to make predictions. That's what we do. And I know we will be just because that's something fun that we love to do is set a record expectation. But I think realistically, outside of just making a prediction for fun, I don't think there should be like a win or loss record expectation on Rhule for at least year one. Just because, I mean, that's what's bit us in the butt every year under Scott. It's just, you always like, okay, yes, bowl game, and then so on and so forth. And, you couldn't even get to a bowl game. You couldn't even get to that first stare. So I think, that's the only thing I offer is like realistically just kind of set back. I know I'll probably chug the offseason Kool-Aid too because we love being offseason national champs. But at the same time, I mean, we probably all should have realized it too with this, like for the start of this season as a reality check of like, what's like, yeah, you get these new coaches in and realistically, like what's going to change. And it's just as much as you want to look back on the season, we probably should have seen the writing on the wall outside of that. But yeah, just a lot of new optimism for Rhule. And I think we might have mentioned this already, and Zach, you might have hit on it, is he said like, yeah, I didn't come here to the players, may not want to be coached by me, but I'm going to coach them because that is my job. Or something, a quote along those lines. And as we've seen, like we expected people to transfer to decommit because they wanted Mickey as the coach. And hindsight's 2020 of what we know now with him. Regardless, that's the player's choice. Like, if I was a recruit and the guy that recruited me or the staff that recruited me was fired or left, like honestly, I probably wouldn't want to go to that school either because like, why would I want to go play for somebody that didn't personally get me at that school? And I'm sure, that's what Rhule's pitching to all these decommits and these transfers right now. It's like, I know I didn't recruit you. I know I didn't get you to come here, but I'm still going to coach you like I recruited you here because that's my job as a head coach. So that's just, I think a couple of the big names. The biggest name I think for me was Ernest Hausman. Going into the portal, he, like we said, the portal is fluid. Some players put their name out there, but don't eventually go anywhere and then come back. So
I hope he comes back.
I hope he does.
I really do.
And just the way he came on in the middle of the season and just kept playing hard. I was like, oh man, like if he keeps developing well with these new coaches and everything, I mean, you have a real chance to be like the next Levante David at Nebraska. And he had some glimpse of that, especially at the Michigan game. Despite getting Nebraska's butts kicked, I mean, I think Ernest Hausman played a heck of a middle season and end of the season there. And, that's a name that hurts to see, like, be in the transfer portal and lose. We'll see. But
there is the other side of that where he might just be putting it in to see just like what kind of offers he gets. And he might be like, you know what?
Especially in the NIL world. That's the biggest thing at Nebraska, and Rhule. He hasn't been in a college coach since NIL happened. So this is all new to him too. But, as we talk about the resources, that's the biggest thing Nebraska also has going for them is like we have 2 NIL companies in this city that are like, that's huge. That's, probably how we got Casey Thompson, probably how we got Trey Palmer, how we got O'Shawn, so on and
it's
so
confirmed
forth.
That's how we got Casey Thompson. He said that when he got here is that like NIL was huge.
Yeah,
like,
and that's Nebraska
he specifically said that.
And so, that's something Rule, also has to learn and adapt to as well. Because like we said, it's all brand new to him. This is his first time back since NIL was introduced in the college world. So I think that's definitely something that, we have to keep an eye on. And I'm sure, hopefully we don't officially lose Malachi Coleman. He said he was decommitting, but the door is always open. I think he's just reevaluating the new staff that's coming in and gonna coach him. So obviously, when he did commit, he did hint at this, like, I was not coming here because of Scott's staff. I'm here because of the current staff, which was Mickey. Now that Mickey's gone, so on and so forth. But he did say on his Twitter that the door is always open. So there's a chance Malachi still commits to Nebraska, but uh, that's always why you got to take those commits with a grain of salt, because they're never really official until you sign the letter of intent with recruiting. But it's just that's the situation with a new head coach and a new head coaching staff coming in, is you're going to lose players, you're going to lose commits. But he's at least trying, like Nate had mentioned, like he's going to all these towns and he's trying to get these commits. I'm offering you, like, this is what I want. Whether you choose to stay or not, obviously he gets it, but he's trying to reconfirm those commits and get them to stay at Nebraska. And I think that's just something that Nebraska, we need. You just need to clean house like we did, and just you got to start with another foundation, because whatever was built up or whatever was there needs to be burned and knocked down to the ground.
And I do think at minimum that the fact that, and I don't necessarily want a head coach that's documenting everywhere they go. Like, I care, but like, I don't necessarily care to like, oh, I ate a burger at this place. Like, I don't necessarily need to know all that.
It's a way
to be the fact that there's accountability. He's like, hey, I'm in Scotts Bluff. I'm in Norfolk. I'm in here. It's like, okay, like he's showing that he's putting in the effort. And granted, who knows? Maybe this is a 1-year thing. Like maybe next year he is a little more quiet on it. Whatever. But like, again, like for me, I think it's, and this kind of goes into like my last and final thoughts. And then I think, I think I'm good otherwise. But like, for me, it's like he's showing the effort. And I don't know if you guys watched the like pre press conference with Mickey or sorry, with Matt. But they had Johnny Rogers as like an interviewee or whatever.
Oh yeah.
One of the big comments that he said, and I thought I did actually think this resonated really well, and I was like, this is actually fitting for Nebraska football fans. Is he said, Nebraska fans don't quit on anything big or small because it may become a habit. And I'm like, it's cheesy as hell, but it's not wrong. Like, I mean, the sellout streak is a perfect example.
But what I mentioned before is like, the fan base is always going to be there. And then, like as Nebraska is right now, you're going to have fans that check out because who wants to watch this bad football team? But the
100%.
minute you start progressing and start getting back in, you're going to get all those fans back because, like you said, like you're never fully going to lose a Nebraska fan. They just might check out for a bit, but they'll come right back in. And
correct.
That's just, like I had mentioned, like you see a nearly full, if not always full stadium on a Saturday to watch an god awful football team play, because that is just who Nebraska fans are. That's just the fan base, and you're always going to have that support. And
if there was ever a question, if you thought Matt Rhule didn't want to do it, just remember this. And he said this. He said he didn't say it like this, but he said it very similar. Is he had all the time in the world to go and get paid $40 million or whatever it was to sit on a beach and do nothing.
Yes. He had
a chance to stay and do nothing and get paid by the Carolina Panthers to do nothing. And he decided literally less than a year after he got fired to come to Nebraska. I'm not gonna say that that's necessarily 100% sign, but his heart is in coaching, and I think he is, and we've all said it. He's the guy that Nebraska needs, and I think obviously we don't know if it's going to work out. No one knows if it's going to work out, but the thing is like his proven track record.
Higher, regardless.
Yeah, his proven track record to me says enough, as in, like, he's done this before. He knows what to do. It might take some adjustment, and he said as much, but I think Nebraska is going to be on the right track. And when I say right track, I would like to point this out to anybody that, wants to question this, because also, speaking of around the Thanksgiving time, I didn't realize this, but a lot of my aunts and uncles apparently listen to us. So shout out to them. Thank you. But also, just on that same track, we had all these conversations, and I said the same things. And I said, I think Nebraska will be back a lot quicker than you think, but it's not going to be next year. It could be next year. There's a chance it could be next year. I'm not going to say it's not.
There's
But
always a chance.
But with this new coach and with his track record, you have to give him at least 3 years. However, I understand we said the same thing about Frost and that didn't work out. But Matt Rhule has the track record that if it doesn't work out in year 3, and also going off the fact that Trev Alberts even said they looked at the analytics and they did all this and they did all that. They essentially just went ham and decided we're going to do everything we can analytically to find the best coach for us. And they landed on Matt Rhule. So to me, I think he's the guy that you have to back. Yes, I know we all said it. We would have loved Fickle, but Fickle is not what we needed right now.
Right. And I think just a couple more points I wanted to wrap up. The 6, at least confirmed, coaching staff that we know under Rhule right now. They first started as kind of leaks, and now I think like a couple days ago, they're like officially confirmed, or it might have been late last week that the Husker account officially confirmed like his 6 new coaching staff right now. The first one is Evan. A lot of these, all preferences, a lot of these coaching staff hires, and as we see this with every coach that gets hired and goes to a new place, has some sort of connection with the head coach. And a lot of these have been coaches that have either been with Rhule at all 3 stops of Temple, Baylor, Carolina, or just some sort of coaching career connection with Rhule at some point. But the first one, Evan Cooper, is going to be the secondary coach in. I don't think the recruiting coordinator title is officially attached to him, but I think that is mostly going to be his job too, is secondary and the recruiting coordinator as well. Offensive coordinator is Marcus Satterfield. He's been with Rhule at all 3 stops. Most recently, he's been South Carolina's offensive coordinator. And I think the stat that they threw out there was was the Georgia and Tennessee games, or some sort of those 2 variation games where he put up like a lot of points on like top ranked teams or anything like that. So just kind of like a wishy-washy good feeling, like, oh, this offensive coordinator can score points type thing. But either way, he's the new offensive coordinator. I'm just glad it's not Whipple. We knew it wasn't going to be Whipple, but we can now finally get that whole thing just out of our system and out the door.
We can hope that Whipple's retirement job was Nebraska.
He hasn't officially announced it, but we're pretty positive Whipple's going to retire.
Whipple has officially retired on the Sun.
On the Sun. His resting place.
You started off good, my man, but
yeah,
it got a little questionable at the end there.
The other one's Terrence Knighton, and I'm probably going to mispronunciate a lot of these names because until we actually hear somebody say their names at a press conference, I don't 100% know if we're saying them right until we actually hear them announced. But Terrence Knighton will be the defensive line coach, and then Corey Campbell will be the head strength and conditioning coach for the team as well.
I believe that was the Hulk.
Yes. If you haven't seen that picture on Twitter yet,
the picture that we all shared, that was definitely not just his name was not just Corey. That was definitely the Incredible Hulk.
The Incredible Hulk. Yes. If you don't know, just Google Corey Campbell as
long as, and I will maintain this because I've said it all year, because he looks good in pictures, and I'm not going to deny that. But as long as he can get some speed into what we need to do rather than just making guys that are really good at lifting 600 pounds. Great.
Yep.
If you can lift 600 pounds and can move if you can do a 40 at whatever is a good speed for that position, great. But you lift 600 pounds, but do something with it. That's all I ask. Which, in his credit, seems like that's kind of what he's been able to do. So
I agree.
I give him credits there. I'm giving him credit so far.
Good. And then the last two coaches to wrap it up of what's been announced so far is Ed Foley as the special teams coach, and then EJ Barthel as running back coach. Most recently at UConn as his most recent stop. But like I said, a lot of these coaches, and this is not uncommon with any head coach that gets hired at another school, is the staff that they either bring from the current school or try to hire has probably had some sort of head or just coaching career connection to the sitting head coach. And that's been the common theme so far with Rhule's hires is they've either been at all three stops with him or just had some sort of coaching stop connection with Rhule, whether it's at Temple, Baylor, Carolina, anything like that. So another name that we don't officially know about yet that's been kind of thrown out for a quarterback coach is Jake Peets, who was a walk-on at Nebraska. I want to say under Callahan or Solich. I think it was Callahan. But he's rumored to be the quarterback coach. So that's kind of the positions that we don't know that probably need to be filled for sure for our defensive coordinator, linebacker coach. God, what am I missing? Quarterback coach, and then
Wide receivers.
Yes. Wide receiver coach. So if you're thinking about tight ends, Marcus Satterfield, if you just do any sort of research on him, when he hasn't been an offensive coordinator, he's also been a tight end coach. So I think they did combine his position of tight ends to offensive coordinator. So that's where the tight end coach, tight end play comes into effect. But yeah, the four that we're looking at are quarterback, wide receiver, linebacker, and defensive coordinator. Again, I'm not 100% positive if he is allowed 10 full-time positions or if it's 11 full-time positions. But either way, you're looking at maybe 4 or 5 more positions to fill that we don't know about yet. And hopefully we will in the coming days, hopefully not weeks, but
there are two more names out there, but they haven't been officially announced as these people have changed their profile picture to say new profile pic, like the whole hashtag thing
right
with Nebraska gear. Don't know what they are other than potentially recruiting roles. But we do have an Omar Hales, who was a special teams coordinator at Eastern U.
Okay.
Potentially just a recruiting role, or could be something in the special teams
I'm
department.
also not going to act like I know anything about these coaches either. I mean, this is
right.
coaches are sure, we know your name.
Yep.
Like Omar Hales, I will say there's been quite a few retweets from Rhule and others that he's been doing that. So I think he might just be very heavily recruiting. Then there's I'm gonna probably kill this one. Adam D. Michelle. And the thing is there's nothing on this guy, and I'm not saying there's nothing previously. It's he just says hashtag new profile picture with him in Husker gear, and then no one knows what he is. So the assumption is a recruiting role, but no one knows.
Right.
He this is his profile. He says, "Hey, I'm part of the Nebraska staff." We don't know what he is. So or at least I don't. I could be wrong, but
probably a good indication.
I mean, he's going to be at Nebraska, probably in a recruiting role. But I think the one point that I want to make sure that's really big is that Ed Foley, who is the special teams coordinator, has a picture on Twitter, and I'm looking at it right now, actually, of him. And he basically says, the Runza magnet, grab me. And he went to Runza, and he got, I don't know what he got, but he's talking about going through Runza. It's yep, Nebraska born and ready. He's good to go. I mean, he's not from here, but I don't think. But he knows how to recruit Nebraska to go to Runza.
One name that I want to throw out there that I don't even know if it will happen or not, but y'all remember Keith Williams?
Yep.
That's a name I'm making this up on the spot if there's any smoke or
Wouldn't
not.
hate it.
I would not hate that at all. I know he had the DUI issue when he was here, but the DUI compared to Mickey's situation, that's not totally acceptable, but it's better than what happened to Mickey, I guess. if
I
I
take
had,
Heath
if I had
Williams.
to pick one or the other, but I mean, yeah, that's if it's a name that I just want to throw out there is like he's had Nebraska connections before. He did great here, so I think he's with Baltimore currently. In some sort of role with
Sure.
Baltimore. But yeah, I think this is current. I'm just looking at their staff page. Yeah, he's currently with Baltimore. So if you like Baltimore's receivers, that's where he is.
It's not an all bad thing.
No.
Baltimore's doing all right.
But that's another name that I kind of mildly got mentioned and thrown around there. But
Well, I'm sure Ron Brown will still be on the staff.
yeah, and
Somehow.
that's we're just talking about full-time paid positions. We're not even talking about analyst position, which Ron Brown currently is.
And I think that's what the two that I just said they might be in that role
just
too.
analysts,
but
we're talking about
still.
full-time, the paid positions that Matt Rhule gets to deal the $7 million pool from. You just go off the assumptions that at least the OC and DC are going to be $1 million at a minimum each. So then you got to figure, the $5 billion for the rest of those roles, which are still going to be six figures. It's just who gets more of the six figures than the other assistants. But
well, Ed Foley deserves at least like 75% of that because he went to Runza. Like that's huge. I'm just gonna say that. Like he went to Runza. That's big.
So if
that's a Nebraska thing.
If we go to Renzo, we just get offered a position on the coaching staff. Is that what
he's
you're
also the? I mean, I hope so. I went to Runza like 2 days ago. So, but he's also the special teams coordinator, and
sorry, Nate, you don't have it up there.
Man.
just order online. You can get some frozen Runzas. They ship them.
Build one.
Oh,
but I mean, I know, that sounds dumb, but still, like special teams has been kind of a point of contention for a lot of fans. So I mean, if him going to Runza is what makes it successful, let's fucking do it. So,
but I think unless we have anything else, I think one last point I kind of wanted to bring the college football sphere back into it is if we kind of just want to make quick predictions for. Well, I guess the first thing we'll talk about is, when we had one of our bye week episodes, we were hoping the playoff wouldn't go to 2026. The Rose Bowl finally gave in and said, you can have your playoff sooner. So now we get a playoff by 2024.
Yeah.
I'm good with it.
Team playoff, I should say.
I'm so excited for it.
And that's gonna be such a wild year because that's the year that USC and UCLA join the Big Ten, and then you first get a 12-team expanded playoff. So it's like everything is that entire start of that season and how that evolves is just going to be tremendous for college football. And it'll be interesting to see how the Big Ten looks too. Are they going to go divisionless? Are they going to go pods? I can't imagine they're going to keep the current division system as it is.
It's not gonna. Or
if they do, it's going to be shifted dramatically. But it'll be interesting to see what the Big Ten does in terms of divisions and how the conference looks and everything like that. But we get a quicker playoff, and we have the 4 teams in the current playoff right now: Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State. If we want to pick, it's hard not to pick Georgia. I mean, it's just what they did to Tennessee. It's like that kind of sold me. What they did to LSU in the conference championship game kind of sold me. I would be more intrigued at a Georgia TCU matchup, but I'm afraid for TCU in that matchup as well. I think the more intriguing one, if you want kind of a closer game, is Georgia Michigan. But not to have a Michigan Ohio State rematch is also like, how could you not want that either? Because definitely Ohio State is going to have a lot of, revenge blood on their hands if they want that matchup. So, but if I had to pick a winner right now, I think it'd be Georgia. Just it's hard not to pick them just based off the games that they played this year and how they've just dominated pretty much every single game. There's been a couple scares. I think the Missouri game was kind of their scare, but I mean, outside of that, they've been pretty dominant all year. But I'll throw that to you guys. Your thoughts on the playoffs and who you want to win.
I'm just glad that they got it right and
Yes.
didn't include Alabama, or as much as Nick Saban pleaded to everyone on was that on Big Noon Kickoff, or was that it was one of the championship games they had Nick Saban on
Yeah, lobbying for his
begging
school.
to
You telling me
begging
there's
to
not
make
an
it in.
SEC bias within that committee?
Yeah.
Give me a break.
But they got it right. I think they got the top 4 teams there.
You don't see any other 2-loss head coach school like
Yeah.
get asked to ESPN to come and lobby for their school to make the playoff, and it's just like, really?
Well, my question is, why didn't Dabo get to come on and do the same thing?
Right. It's just like,
Exactly.
what other 2-loss school got invited to come lobby for their school on the selection show for the committee? I mean, it's just you can't tell me that there's not an SEC bias within that committee.
Yeah.
Which I know we're all glad. I'd rather argue about a 13, 14 seed than who gets in the top 4. Because
That's the best part.
At that point, you are arguing about 2 and 3 lost teams.
That's 100% the best part about the 12, the 12 team bracket though, or whatever it's going to be. Is
Right.
like at that point, then it's like now you're officially at the point where like these can be bowl games or whatever.
Right.
They decide the playoff.
And
like,
it will matter of
gonna be
who
great.
are 2 losses to, who are your 3 losses to, are your 2 losses to not ranked teams, and somebody else's 3 losses are against top ranked teams. I mean, at that point, then you can really take into the strength of schedule and who did you play, who did you not play type thing, kind of like March Madness, but slightly smaller. Not slightly, a lot smaller than 68 teams.
I mean, why not just do like November Madness and start just doing like, 128 teams and we just all play a shitload of football games throughout like a month and a half.
You would definitely have no non-conference games. You just have to have conference games at that point, especially if you're going to have 14 plus mega conferences.
I'm just kidding. I don't want this.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't actually want this. This would never work, but it would still be funny. Anyway, sorry, Nate. We took away from all of what you were saying.
No, I think, like I said, I was just glad they got it right. I think they got the top 4 teams. I think I'm with you, Andy. I think the most intriguing matchup is probably that Michigan-Georgia, assuming they can both make it in. I would love for TCU to win it all. Hypno-Toad. I would absolutely live for that hype video if they won the national championship. I would be playing that on repeat nonstop anywhere I went. But and who knows, Ohio State could, like you said, they could have their revenge moment and try to get back. I mean, I'm sure they have a lot of incentive. They felt like they were slighted. They only got in because USC lost, and
I remember
sure they have their reasons, but
I don't remember if Utah's coach said on Twitter or like sent them a text or anything, but I saw a quote that Kyle Whittingham was just like, "You're welcome, Ryan Day."
Yep.
For those that didn't watch the Pac-12 championship, Utah kind of manhandled USC.
It was beautiful. Wasn't even close.
It was not.
Yeah, I think for my prediction, we'll go with the Big Ten team. I'll go with Michigan.
Okay.
Win it all with their actual national championship, not like
the shared 1997. Yeah.
There it is.
Give me a break. We all know we won, and we're not just saying that because we're biased.
Well, so Nate took what I was gonna say. I was gonna be the guy that was gonna be like, I think Michigan might do it. But you know what? I'll jump on the sword, and I'm okay with it. TCU is number 3 for a reason. What the reason is, the college football playoff said this is why. I think they're going to surprise us. I'll pick them to at least, and I'm saying this way,
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll get to the. I think they'll get to the game. I think they'll get to the final, the championship game. Whether I think they win, that's different. Because out of all the teams that I think would win right now, I'm split between Georgia and Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But I would put, I'd put some money on on TCU making it to the championship game. I think they're going to surprise us. I legitimately do. I don't know why. I don't know how, but I think TCU is going to show up for their game and figure it out. And I think they're going to do it. But the weirdest thing is that I say that and they have to beat Michigan. Is that right?
Yes.
So they have to beat Michigan. So, I mean, if they beat Michigan, my whole thought this time is that Michigan, I think, could win the college football playoff. And if TCU beats Michigan, I have a feeling that they could beat Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So
I forgot. I mean, Michigan's played the last 2 games without Blake Corum and have still looked really good on the ground with their backup running backs.
that's been the thing, is the fact that Blake Corum is not playing. I don't think he's going to play
No,
the rest of the year. He's out. Yeah. So Michigan has looked solid. And so if TCU beats Michigan,
which, any Big Ten like West team that watched the Big Ten championship was going to get rolled like that anyways, but
right. But if TCU comes in and beats Michigan, then I'm convinced at that point that they have every shot. And not only that, I will point this out. If TCU makes it to the college football playoff, which granted, this isn't going to really matter, I think next year. Is it next year or 2 years?
For the 12 teams? Yeah, it'll be 2 years. Yep. So next year is the last 14 playoff.
Okay.
Yep. And after that will be 12 teams.
Right. But if TCU makes it to the college football playoff in the final, then that really opens the door for next year, because then some Big 12 teams could be really working and some Big 12 teams could be really, like we could see some actual shakeup. And then comes the 12 team, and then we have some real discussion, which I think, honestly, in the college football realm is huge. I think it's going to be great. Mm-hmm. Even as a Nebraska fan, I think there is a possibility that we could be looking at, I'm just looking at the college football playoff website. There's a chance that within the next 5 years, and I'm being very hype right now, very hype. But if Matt Rhule puts shit together and we have we put things together and it works out, we could be top 25 in the next 5 years.
I mean,
it could happen. It's a lot, but it could happen.
The expectations for programs going forward is you no longer have to be top 4. It's like, okay, you got to be top 12 to just get into the playoff now. So, obviously you always want to be number 1 and everything, but if you're a 2 or 3 loss team, I mean, you're looking at that as like, okay, we just got to be top 12 at the last game of the season, and you're in the playoffs type thing. So yeah, it changes the mindset and mentality of, if you're not like a school right now that's Georgia, Bama, Michigan, Ohio State, it changes a lot of those other schools' mentality to, okay, we just got to be, no worse than 2 or 3 losses and have a good, have good quality 2 or 3 losses, and you're probably either in or in contention to get in at that point without winning your conference championship either. Which, right. I've always been, that's, as much as USC got manhandled, I'm also saying that if they didn't play that game, they're in the playoff. And that's just been kind of my gripe this entire time with the playoff, is you're going to punish a team for playing their conference championship while Ohio State and Alabama don't play in their conference championship and somehow still make it in just by doing nothing. So that's why I'm glad it's expanding to 12, because you're going to have a lot less of those debates now of a 2 or 3 loss team getting in, because they're not going to be probably playing in their championship. They're just going to be hopefully just good enough to get in type thing. So that'll be a fun debate to not have anymore.
Agreed.
But
I think, let's just say, I think with that, we're
Yeah.
caught up. I think we're caught up,
Yeah.
boys.
it's been a long. We just want to say thank you. I know we'll go around and say our thank yous, but for giving us a shot this year. First season under our belts, we definitely improved as equipment wise and talkative wise of what we wanted to talk about and how we talk about it and going on and so forth. But as Husker fans, and trudging through these seasons is never fun, especially how everything got turned upside down after Georgia Southern. We picked a heck of a year to start the podcast with everything that has happened going forward. But it's been fun. It's been I say that knowing everything, it was not fun at times for how many rants that we had, how much emotional distress and distraught that I have felt this entire Husker season. As much as we always say, like halfway through the season of like, okay, let's just get the next year. We want the season to be done. At the same time, I'm always sad because like now I gotta wait till next August to even the spring game is what it is, but you don't really start getting into back fully into Husker football until training camp happens in August. So it's a little sad that I won't be watching Nebraska until August anymore, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, season's done. We're glad we don't have to talk about this old team anymore because they don't exist. We're on to the new rural era of Nebraska football. And, barring anything emergent happened with the program, we probably won't have a new episode until next year again, barring anything that's noteworthy that we have to come back and say something about. But it's been fun. Thank you for those that have listened to my rants, at least just for me. That's what this platform's for. But we're glad that you stuck through us, and I know Zach, we've talked about at least just some new ideas for next year, what we want to try, what we want to look like, and so on and so forth. So hopefully we can fix those and get those worked out of what we want to try and get some new experiences for next year going forward. But with that, thank you as always. Skurs by 90 and go Big Red.
It's hard to follow that up, especially after just the year that we've had. This has been fun. I remember when we, all three of us, decided we wanted to start a podcast, and we were like, this could go nowhere. And the fact that we've had consistent followers, just consistent people, it's been great. And, I don't want to necessarily speak for all you guys because, you've got your thoughts too, but it's been a lot of fun. And it's wild to think that in the future this could go on longer, especially with how long it took us to get this last episode out. But like, this has been fun. I have had so much fun just literally BSing college football with two of my best friends. And so not only that, like this gives us the platform to do that in person since we all don't live in the same town. And it gives us the platform to do it. And then we also decided to record these conversations and then have everybody else listen to us. And then we have people actually listen to us. Like that's wild to me. Like the concept is just nuts. And yeah, kind of like Andy said, we've got ideas to make year 2 and beyond even better. And so we hope that for those of you that are consistent and that have listened to us, obviously we want to thank you because it's been awesome. We love doing it and it's been amazing. And we're going to keep doing it as long as we have a following that wants us to keep doing it. And like I said, we've got ideas and we're gonna improve this thing. We're gonna make it let's make it big. If you got friends that need to listen to podcasts, you might as well introduce them to us, because I'd like to think we're pretty good. I mean, it took us a little bit. I know Andy said that. It took us a little bit to get there, but we got there. I think we're all right. I'm a little biased, but
Pretty good for year one.
that's right. That's what I think. No, but from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate everybody that's listened to us, everybody that's given us a shot. Even if it's not for you, we hope that maybe we can improve and get you back on our board, because we're three casual fans that love to talk about college football. Who doesn't like that? Especially Nebraska football. So I appreciate everybody that's listened to us from the bottom of my heart. And I will pass it back to Nate to finish us off.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of finish with a quote that Matt Rhule said. "It will be hard and it may take time, but it will be done." That's on getting Nebraska kind of where it needs to be, and that's also holds true for Nebraskabilities too. I think we're going to keep growing within this every day, and it's really been an absolute pleasure to just be able to discuss something that I personally love with two of my best friends, and it's just been it's been a great experience, and I'm glad. I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else. So I want to thank everyone out there who has supported us along the way, everyone who's listened, commented on our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. We appreciate you wholeheartedly. And I want to thank you two, Andy and Zach, just for being on this ride with me as well. So it's been truly awesome.
Ditto, homie.
So
It's been an emotionally draining ride, is what it's been.
We have to finish this off correct then.
Yep.
Ready, boys?
Are we all going to say it?
1, 2, 3. If it's a possibility, it's a Nebraskability. The internet's probably going to really screw us on that one, but we tried.
We tried our best.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate all you.